You have a talk that focuses on the data exhaust from the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. What kind of data exhaust does the CBC create?
We create loads of log files. We create loads and loads and loads of data tailings. This is regular data that's created by our audience and by our content producers that is generally not reviewed. So things like search term tailings and exhaust. Not exactly the most perfect stream, but still analyzable and recoverable.
So how is that data exhaust applied?
So one good example is with respect to podcasts. Canadians absolutely love their podcasts. There's no way of actually tracking how a podcast is being consumed after it's been downloaded.
Yeah.
However, the podcast server generates a huge amount of log file. And just recently we've been able to mine that data and be able to inform producers and potential advertising partners about the reach and depth of engagement that we have with our podcasts.
So you're looking at just popularity, topics, particular shows, demographics, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. With perhaps the exception of demographics,
Right,
we don't run the union back to DMAs,
Yep.
for instance. However, these are very, very specialized, specific audiences, especially when you look at the breadth of what CBC radio produces.
What were the biggest roadblocks you encountered as you sought to use this kind of data?
There were quite a few. Surprisingly, there were quite a few. Sometimes there's a lot of fear in what the data may actually reveal. Sometimes there's a lot of uncertainty about the accuracy of the underlying source or whether or not it's trustable enough to action. And sometimes there's quite a bit of doubt whether or not it'll make a direct impact to the business. In other words, there's so few resources available, and we are a content company, we're not a technology company. So is there likely to be a strong return for mining or recovering any of this data exhaust?
You mentioned fear. What kind of fear? Is it things like this show or this thing is not as popular as we thought it was?
Exactly. Sometimes if it turns out that perhaps people overestimated the popularity of a given program, given a very, very vocal group of hardcore folks, and it turns out that the data doesn't support that, that may generate a little bit of egg. Now, in my opinion, it's way better to know something.
Sure.
In the end, but sometimes there may be political ramifications for specific pieces of information that go out.
Sure. What tips do you have for organizations who want to mine their data, but they don't have the extensive internal data resources? You mentioned being a content company, not a technology company.
That's right. A few things. I'd start off with focusing on problems. It's very, very easy to find large troves of data within the organization that don't actually match up to a burning solution that's happening or does not necessarily line up to an item on the roadmap right away. So I'd advise to take a look at the nature of the questions that are being asked, the pain points that are within the organization, and then perhaps before investing in a brand new data stream, kick over a few rocks and see whether or not that data is available already in some form or in some form of unrefined form within the enterprise.
Are there some options of maybe kicking over rocks and finding things that are good enough to start an inquiry, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. Sometimes it's really amazing when you discover a underutilized product or a highly utilized product that's being used in a different way, and then when you realize that some of that information may be applicable to a different business problem that you have. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation has a large number of content verticals, and it's also in many ways mirrored on the French side. So sometimes there are sources of data that are available on a disparate part of the Federation than in other parts of the organization. So hunting first and then taking advantage of it before going right away to look for a different data stream.
Last question for you. What people or projects are you following these days?
I'm absolutely fascinated by the science of decision neuroscience. There's so much about how Canadians, how people consume media and consume content within the context of their home or when they're on the go. Being able to understand how they make decisions about which devices to pay attention to as a flow of data. The second big technology that we're looking at that I'm following is Neo4j and graph databases. The ability to match the content graph back up with the audience graph, being able to understand what's relevant, especially given the breadth of content that we have and the absolute huge number of Canadians and Canadian machines that we hit each and every single month.
Great. Well, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much for having me.